He was just a quiet kid in the back of the class, until one comment changed everything. Before we start, comment where you're watching from, and if you've ever been underestimated because of how you look. Hit subscribe if you believe in proving people wrong. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The Jackson Community Center gym smelled like sweat and expensive equipment. Polished wooden floors reflected the bright overhead lights, while gleaming martial arts gear lined the walls like trophies. This wasn't some rundown neighborhood gym. This was where Jackson's wealthy families sent their kids to learn discipline and respect. Trayvon Robinson stood near the back wall, watching the white students practice their forms in crisp uniforms. His own clothes told a different story. Worn sneakers with tape holding the sole together, faded jeans, and a hoodie that had seen better days. At 16, he learned to make himself small in spaces like this. The other students moved with confidence that came from never being questioned. They belonged here. Their parents paid the monthly fees without thinking twice. They drove themselves to class in cars newer than most houses in West Jackson. All right, everyone gather around. Eric's voice boomed across the gym. The head instructor carried himself like a man who'd never lost a fight. Third-degree black belt wrapped around his waist, muscles that spoke of years in the gym, and that particular swagger that came from being the best fighter in the room. Eric's eyes scanned the group, lingering on Trayvon with obvious amusement. "We got a new face today. Why don't you step forward, son?" Trayvon felt every pair of eyes turn toward him. The silence felt heavy, loaded with judgment. He stepped forward slowly, keeping his head down. "What's your name, kid?" "Trayvon." "Trayvon," Eric repeated, drawing out each syllable like he was tasting something foreign. "Well, Trayvon, I hope you're ready to work. This isn't some playground where you can just mess around." A few students snickered. Trayvon's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Eric circled him like a predator studying prey. "You think you can handle Matt, son? I mean, this is serious martial arts training, not street fighting." The insult hit exactly where Eric intended. Trayvon's hands clenched into fists, but his voice stayed calm. "I'm here to learn. Learning's one thing, but maybe we should see what you're working with first." Eric's smile didn't reach his eyes. "How about we go around, just for laughs? Show the class what raw talent looks like before we polish it up." The crowd chuckled nervously. This was entertainment for them, watching the poor black kid get humbled by their hero instructor. "I don't want any trouble," Trayvon said quietly. "No trouble at all." Eric clapped his hands together. "Just a friendly sparring match. Unless you're scared." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Trayvon felt the weight of every stare, every smirk, every assumption about who he was and what he could do. What would you do if someone challenged you just to embarrass you? Tell me in the comments. Trayvon looked around the gym one more time. These people saw a target. They saw someone who didn't belong, someone they could use for their amusement. They saw exactly what they wanted to see. "I'm ready," he said. Eric's grin widened. "That's the spirit. Don't worry, I'll take it easy on you." The instructor moved to the center of the mat with the confidence of someone who'd done this dance 1,000 times. He bounced on his toes, shadow boxing a little, putting on a show for his audience. Trayvon walked to the center mat. His movements were different now, purposeful, controlled. He reached up and pulled off his hoodie in one smooth motion. The gym went quiet. Trayvon's arms showed the kind of muscle definition that didn't come from casual workouts. Scars crisscrossed his knuckles like a roadmap of hidden battles. His shoulders carried the weight of someone who'd been training seriously for years. Eric's confident smile faltered just a fraction. If you've ever been judged by your appearance, give this video a thumbs up. What happens next will shock you. They expected him to fall in seconds. What they saw instead left everyone speechless. Have you ever had skills that people didn't know about? Drop a flex biceps in the comments if you've ever surprised someone. Eric threw the first punch, a quick jab meant to test Trayvon's reflexes. Most beginners would have flinched, stumbled, or taken it square in the face. Trayvon's head moved just enough. The punch whistled past his ear. "Lucky dodge," Eric muttered, throwing a combination this time. Left hook, right cross, uppercut. Trayvon slipped the first, blocked the second, and stepped back from the third. His movements were fluid, natural, like he'd been doing this for years. The crowd's amusement started shifting to confusion. This wasn't how these things usually went. Eric's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward with a more serious combination, the kind he used on advanced students, the kind that usually ended these little demonstrations quickly. But Trayvon wasn't there when the punches arrived. Stay calm. Move like water. Let them come to you. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Marcus Robinson had been built like a tank, with hands that could crush steel and a heart that could heal anything. Every evening after school, they'd train in the backyard while his mother cooked dinner. Fighting ain't about being the strongest, son. It's about being the smartest. Marcus would set up scenarios, multiple attackers, confined spaces, fighting while tired. Military-style training that most kids never saw. Your mind is your best weapon. Your body is just the tool. The memory flashed as Eric pressed forward with increasing frustration. Each technique met empty air. Each combination found nothing but space where Trayvon had been. Stand still and fight. Eric snapped. Trayvon's response was to duck under a wild swing and tap Eric lightly on the ribs. Not hard enough to hurt, but precise enough to show he could have done more. The gym fell completely silent. Eric's face flushed red. You think you're funny? I think you're telegraphing your right hand, Trayvon said calmly. Where did that come from? The watching students exchanged glances. Telegraphing was advanced terminology. Beginners didn't know words like that. Eric threw his best combination, a feint followed by a spinning back kick he'd perfected over 20 years of training. It was a signature move, the one that impressed parents and intimidated troublemakers. Trayvon caught the kick midair. For a moment, nobody moved. Eric's leg was trapped in Trayvon's hands, his balance completely compromised. The instructor's face showed shock, then anger, then something that looked like fear. What skills did your parents teach you that others don't know about? Share below. Trayvon could have swept Eric's standing leg, could have thrown him to the ground, could have ended this humiliation in a dozen different ways. Instead, he released the leg and stepped back. Maybe we should slow down, Trayvon suggested. But Eric wasn't hearing reason anymore. His reputation was on the line in front of his paying customers. He rushed forward with a wild combination, abandoning technique for aggression. Trayvon moved like smoke. Every punch missed by inches. Every kick found nothing but air. Then almost casually, Trayvon struck back. The punch was controlled, precise, and perfectly timed. It caught Eric just below the ribs, lifting him slightly off his feet. Not enough to seriously hurt, but enough to drop him to one knee. The gym erupted in gasps and whispers. Eric knelt on the mat, struggling to breathe, staring up at the quiet kid who just made him look like an amateur. Trayvon stood over him, not gloating, not celebrating, just waiting. Where did you learn to fight like that? Eric wheezed. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to see what happens when someone underestimates the wrong person. The moment Eric hit the ground, everything in that gym changed forever. Comment 1 if you've ever shocked someone who thought they knew you. This moment is for everyone who's been underestimated. Trayvon extended his hand to help Eric up. The instructor stared at it for a long moment, his pride warring with necessity. I don't need your help, Eric muttered, struggling to his feet. But everyone had seen it. The great Eric, the man who'd intimidated parents and students for years, had been dropped by a kid in worn sneakers. That was impressive, came a voice from the back. Mrs. Henderson, the gym owner, stepped forward. She was a sharp-eyed woman who'd built this place from nothing. Where did you train? Trayvon hesitated. The truth was complicated, painful, and none of their business. My father taught me some things. Your father must be quite the instructor, she said. Is he local? I'd love to meet him. The question hit like a physical blow. Trayvon's composure cracked for just a moment, long enough for everyone to see the pain flash across his face. He's not around anymore. The gym fell quiet. Eric, still catching his breath, looked up with something that might have been sympathy, or maybe just curiosity. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Henderson said gently. But his training clearly took. That was some of the cleanest defensive work I've ever seen. Other students began whispering among themselves. The rich kids who'd been laughing 5 minutes ago now looked at Trayvon with something approaching respect. Clean? Eric stood up, his pride bleeding through his words. That was street fighting. Dirty technique. This is a respectable gym. Dirty. Trayvon's voice carried an edge now. Which part was dirty? The part where I didn't hit you until you gave me no choice? Or the part where I pulled that punch so you could still walk? The watching students shifted uncomfortably. They'd all seen Eric push the confrontation, seen him escalate when Trayvon tried to de-escalate. You caught me off guard, Eric said. That's all. Then let's go again. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Eric's eyes widened. Around the gym, students leaned forward with anticipation. Mrs. Henderson stepped between them. I think we've seen enough for today. No, Eric said, his voice tight. If he wants to play tough guy, let's see what he's really got. Eric moved to the center of the mat, but something had changed. The casual confidence was gone, replaced by anger and desperation. He needed to prove himself, to show these paying customers that he was still the king of his domain. The moment when someone who dismissed you realizes your worth is everything. Sure time this happened to you. This time, Eric came out swinging for real. No holding back, no teaching moment. This was a fight. Trayvon moved differently too. The defensive shell came down, replaced by something fluid and dangerous. He wasn't just avoiding punches anymore. He was controlling the distance, setting up angles, making Eric look slow and clumsy. A perfect slip led to a body shot that doubled Eric over. A smooth counter turned Eric's aggression against him, sending him stumbling across the mat. Stop playing with me, Eric roared. I'm not playing, Trayvon said quietly. Eric charged forward with everything he had. 20 years of training, all his best techniques, thrown at this kid who'd humiliated him in front of his students. Trayvon waited until the last possible moment, then moved. The combination was beautiful in its simplicity. A short uppercut to the body, followed by a controlled right cross that caught Eric perfectly on the jaw. Eric's legs buckled. He dropped to both knees, then pitched forward onto his hands. The gym was dead silent. Trayvon stood over the fallen instructor, not celebrating, not gloating, just waiting to see if Eric would get up. Eric pushed himself up slowly, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were unfocused, but they burned with humiliation and rage. Where did you really learn a fight like that? He spat. Prison? Gang training? What kind of thug are you really? The words hit the gym like a bomb. Students gasped. Mrs. Henderson's face went pale, and Trayvon's expression went cold. If you're loving this comeback story, smash that like button. The real story is just beginning. When they started asking questions about his training, Trayvon's past began to surface. Have you ever had to keep painful secrets to protect yourself? Comment survivor if you understand hiding your truth. What did you just call me? Trayvon's voice was deadly quiet. Eric wiped blood from his mouth, his humiliation turning to venom. You heard me. Kids don't fight like that unless they learn it on the streets. What gang taught you those moves? Mrs. Henderson moved forward. Eric, that's enough. No, it's not enough. Eric struggled to his feet, pointing at Trayvon. Look at him. Look at where he's from. You think that kind of skill comes from some after-school program? The other students watched in uncomfortable silence. They'd enjoyed the show when Eric was dominating, but this felt different, uglier. My father was a Marine, Trayvon said, his voice controlled but dangerous. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan. He taught me to defend myself. Right? Eric laughed bitterly. And I'm supposed to believe some ex-military guy just happened to produce a kid who fights like a professional? Believe what you want. But Eric wasn't done. The humiliation had twisted something inside him, and he needed to strike back any way he could. Where's Daddy now? Did he run out on you? Is that why you're so angry? Trayvon's hands clenched into fists. The pain in his chest was sharp, immediate, and Eric had found exactly the right spot to twist the knife. He's dead, Trayvon said simply. The gym went quiet again, but Eric pressed on. Dead how? Galaxy don't. Overdose. Or did he get himself killed doing something stupid? Eric, Mrs. Henderson's voice cracked like a whip. "Stop. Now." But Trayvon was already moving toward the exit, his face carefully blank. He grabbed his hoodie and backpack, ignoring the stares and whispers. "Yeah, run away," Eric called after him. "That's what your kind does when things get real." Trayvon stopped at the door. For a moment, everyone thought he might turn around and finish what they'd started. Instead, he walked out without another word. Have you ever felt like you had to prove yourself in spaces where you didn't belong? Tell me in the comments. Outside, the Mississippi heat hit him like a wall. Trayvon walked quickly down the street, his mind racing with memories he tried to keep buried. Marcus Robinson, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, died in custody, Baton Rouge Parish Jail, Louisiana. The official cause of death was listed as natural causes, but Trayvon had read the autopsy report. His father, a man who could run 10 miles without breaking a sweat, had supposedly died of a heart attack at age 38. The same father who taught him that fighting was about more than physical strength. Control your emotions, son. Anger makes you stupid. Pain makes you reckless. Master yourself first, then you can master anything. But Marcus Robinson had been more than just a father and trainer. He'd been a hero, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 3 combat tours. He'd saved lives, led men through hell, and come home to raise his family in peace. Then he'd driven to Louisiana to visit his sick sister and never came home. Trayvon's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "How was class, baby?" He stared at the message, not knowing how to answer. How could he explain that he'd just been called a thug by a man who didn't know anything about their family? How could he tell her that people still looked at him and saw everything except what he really was? His phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. "Saw what happened at the gym. We need to talk. M." Trayvon frowned. Who was M? And how did they know about the gym? A third text came through. "Meet me at the community center parking lot. 20 minutes. I knew your father." The words hit him like electricity. Someone knew his father? Someone local? Trayvon started walking faster, his mind spinning with questions. In West Jackson, secrets had a way of surfacing when you least expected them. This story goes deeper than anyone expected. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and share your theories in the comments. When word spread about what happened in the gym, some people didn't want the story getting out. Have you ever been told to stay in your place? Type courage if you've faced intimidation for being yourself. The community center parking lot was nearly empty when Trayvon arrived. He stood near the basketball courts, watching cars pass on the main road, wondering if he was making a mistake. "You're Marcus Robinson's boy." The voice came from behind him. Trayvon turned to see an older black man in a janitor's uniform, maybe 50 years old, with graying hair and intelligent eyes. "You know me? I know your father. I'm Marcus Washington. People call me Washington." He extended a weathered hand. "I work maintenance at the community center. I also worked with your daddy when he was stationed at Camp Shelby." Trayvon shook the man's hand, studying his face. "You were military? 22 years, Army. Your father and I met during joint training exercises." "That man saved my life in Afghanistan." Wash's eyes softened. "I heard what happened at the gym today. Word travels fast in Jackson. People are talking about it. People are talking about a lot of things. That's why I wanted to meet you." Wash glanced around the parking lot. "Your father's death wasn't what they said it was." The words hit Trayvon like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Marcus Robinson didn't die of no heart attack. Not that man. He was healthy as a horse and twice as strong." Wash's voice dropped. "I've been asking questions for 3 years. Quiet questions, and some folks don't like questions." Trayvon felt his world shifting. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that get you threatening phone calls. The kind that make your car tires mysteriously flat. The kind that make people suggest you might want to move to another town." As if summoned by their conversation, Trayvon's phone started ringing. "Unknown number." "Answer it," Wash said grimly. Trayvon picked up. "Hello, is this Trayvon Robinson?" The voice was white, male, and deliberately calm. "Who's asking?" "Someone who saw your little show at the gym today. Impressive work." Trayvon's blood went cold. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. Jackson is a peaceful town. We don't like troublemakers. We don't like people who stir up problems where there weren't any before. I haven't stirred up anything. Haven't you? Beat up a respected instructor. Made a scene. Got people talking about things they shouldn't be talking about. The caller paused, letting the threat sink in. Here's some free advice, son. Find another gym. Find another hobby. Find another way to spend your time. Because if you keep making waves, you might find yourself in the same situation as your daddy. The line went dead. What would you do if people tried to intimidate you for succeeding? Share your reaction below. Trayvon stared at his phone, his hand shaking slightly. They threatened me, and it won't be the last time, Wash said quietly. These people killed your father, Trayvon. They're not going to hesitate to hurt you if you get too close to the truth. What truth? What really happened to him? Wash looked around the parking lot again, then motioned for Trayvon to follow him to a more secluded spot near the building. Your father was investigating something when he died. Something about missing military equipment, stolen weapons, things that were supposed to be destroyed but ended up on the streets instead. Why would he investigate that? Because he was still a Marine, son? Because he couldn't stand seeing military weapons used to hurt civilians? Because he was trying to do the right thing? Trayvon felt anger building in his chest, and they killed him for it. They killed him because he was getting close to something big, something that involved people with power, people with connections, people who couldn't afford to let him keep digging. The two men stood in silence for a moment, the weight of truth settling between them. Why are you telling me this? Trayvon asked. Because you're his son, because you have a right to know, and because after what I saw today, I think you might be the only person with the strength to finish what he started. Trayvon's phone buzzed with a text message. This time it was from his mother. Baby, why is there a police car parked outside our house? His blood turned to ice. They're watching my family. They're watching all of us, Wash said. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Pretty house. Pretty family. Be ashamed if something happened to them. Trayvon's hands clenched into fists. The fear was there, sharp and immediate, but underneath it was something else. Something his father had taught him in their backyard training sessions. When someone threatens what you love, you don't back down. You get smarter, you get stronger, and you make sure they regret underestimating you. If you believe in standing strong against intimidation, give this video a thumbs up. The battle is just beginning. What Trayvon didn't tell anyone was that his father's death wasn't an accident. Marcus Robinson had been investigating corruption in the Baton Rouge Police Department when he was arrested on false charges. 3 days later, he was found dead in his cell, with officials claiming suicide. But Marcus had left behind something they couldn't destroy: combat training videos and detailed notes about dirty cops who were protected by the system. Every morning before school, Trayvon would watch those videos in his basement, learning the same techniques his father had mastered in the Marines. The punching bag hanging from the ceiling bore the marks of years of silent training. His mother, Sarah, never said anything, but she knew. She could hear the sound of discipline echoing through the house at 5 a.m. every day. Your father would be proud, she whispered one morning, watching him practice combinations that looked too advanced for a teenager. But he'd also want you to be careful. Some fights aren't worth winning if they cost you everything. Trayvon paused, sweat dripping from his forehead. Mom, what if being careful means letting them win? The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah Robinson had lost her husband to a system that protected the wrong people. Now she watched her son carry that same fire in his eyes, and it scared her more than anything. But what scared her most was the phone call she'd received that morning. A voice she didn't recognize had said, "Keep your boy quiet, or he'll end up like his father." The line went dead before she could respond. Have you ever felt like you're carrying someone else's fight? How far would you go to honor their memory? Let me know in the comments below, and if this story is hitting different, hit that like button to let me know you're still with me. Jackson Training Compound became a battleground overnight. Word spread fast in a small town, and everyone had an opinion about what happened between Trayvon and Eric. The white side of town painted Eric as the victim, a respected instructor who was just trying to help a troubled kid. The black community saw something else entirely, a young man who refused to be disrespected. Pastor Williams from Mount Olive Baptist Church tried to calm tensions during Sunday service. Violence isn't the answer. He preached to a congregation that included Trayvon's family. We fight injustice with love, not fists. But in the back pew, old Mr. Johnson, a Vietnam veteran who'd seen his share of battles, shook his head. Sometimes he whispered to his wife, "Love needs backup." The divide grew deeper when Eric's father, Judge Robert Harrison, made a statement to the local newspaper. This incident shows what happens when children aren't taught proper respect for authority. That young man should be held accountable for his actions. The same judge who had dismissed the case against the officers involved in Marcus Robinson's death was now calling for justice against his son. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. Trayvon's phone buzzed with messages from classmates. Some called him a hero. Others called him a thug. The weight of carrying his community's hopes and fears pressed down on his shoulders like a loaded barbell. "You okay, son?" asked Coach Martinez, the only instructor at the gym who'd stood up for Trayvon that day. "I don't know," Trayvon admitted. "I just wanted to learn how to defend myself. Now everyone's watching everything I do." What Coach Martinez said next would change everything. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let the world watch. Are you Team Trayvon, or do you think he went too far? The comments are about to get heated. So drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge what you think you know. Behind the abandoned warehouse on Elm Street, Trayvon had built something special. Using his father's notes and salvaged equipment, he'd created a training ground that would make professional gyms jealous. Heavy bags hung from steel beams. A makeshift ring was outlined with rope, and mirrors salvaged from a closed-in studio lined one wall. This was where he'd really learned to fight. Not from YouTube videos or weekend classes, but from the ghost of a man who trained Special Forces soldiers. Marcus Robinson's voice echoed through every combination, every defensive move, every counterattack that had shocked Eric and the entire gym. "Your left foot is too wide," Trayvon muttered, repeating his father's correction from a video he'd watched 1,000 times. "Balance comes from the center, not the stance." His best friend, Kevin, discovered the secret training ground by accident when he followed Trayvon after school. What he found left him speechless. This wasn't just a teenager playing with punching bags. This was a young warrior preparing for battles he hoped he'd never have to fight. "Bro, how long have you been doing this?" Kevin asked, watching Trayvon flow through combinations that looked like they belonged in a professional training camp. "Since I was 12, Trayvon answered, not breaking his rhythm. "Dad's been teaching me even after he died." Kevin picked up one of the notebooks filled with Marcus Robinson's handwriting. Combat techniques, psychological warfare, de-escalation tactics. It read like a manual for survival in a world that didn't want you to survive. "This is why you destroyed Eric," Kevin realized. "You weren't just throwing punches. You were using military-level training." Trayvon stopped hitting the bag and turned to face his friend. "Kevin, my father died because he tried to expose corruption. Now they're coming for me. This isn't just about martial arts anymore." The sound of footsteps outside the warehouse made both teenagers freeze. Someone was watching. Do you have a secret skill that nobody knows about? Something that could change people's perception of you overnight? Share your hidden talents in the comments and smash that like button if you're ready to see what happens next. The black sedan had been parked across from Trayvon's house for 3 days. His mother noticed it first, but when she called the police, they said there was nothing they could do about a car legally parked on a public street. The same police department that had failed to investigate Marcus Robinson's death was now failing to protect his family. At school, Trayvon felt eyes on him everywhere. Teachers whispered when he passed. Students pulled out their phones to record him walking down the hallway. The pressure was building, and everyone could feel it. "You need to apologize," Principal Johnson said during a mandatory meeting. "This whole situation has gotten out of hand, and an apology to Eric would go a long way toward healing the community." Trayvon's mother squeezed his hand under the table. "For what?" she asked. "For defending himself? For not backing down when someone tried to humiliate him? For escalating a situation that could have been handled differently?" The principal replied. "Violence is never the answer." But Trayvon had learned something from his father's notes that most people never understood. Sometimes violence is the only language bullies understand. And sometimes, backing down just makes the target on your back bigger. That night, the threat started. Anonymous messages on social media, phone calls with no voice on the other end, and tire tracks in their front yard that hadn't been there the day before. The message was clear: disappear or face the consequences. We could move, his mother suggested over dinner. Start over somewhere else. Like Dad tried to do, Trayvon asked. Mom, running away didn't save him. It just made him easier to find. The next morning, Trayvon found a note taped to his locker. Your father should have kept his mouth shut. You should too. But Marcus Robinson hadn't raised his son to keep his mouth shut. He'd raised him to stand up, speak truth, and never back down from a fight that mattered. And this fight was starting to matter more than anyone realized. Have you ever been threatened for standing up for what's right? How did you handle it? Drop your experiences in the comments and hit subscribe if you want to see how this story ends. Everything changed when they came for Kevin. Trayvon's best friend was walking home from basketball practice when 3 guys in masks jumped him behind the school. They didn't take his wallet or his phone. They left him with a message: tell your boy to watch his back. When Trayvon saw Kevin's swollen face and split lip, something inside him snapped. This wasn't about respect anymore. This wasn't about proving himself in a gym. This was about people he cared about getting hurt because he refused to bow down. I'm sorry, Trayvon said, helping Kevin ice his injuries. This is my fault. No, Kevin replied, wincing as he touched his lip. This is their fault. And you know what? I'm glad you didn't back down. Someone needs to stand up to these people. That night, Trayvon made a decision that would change everything. He called Coach Martinez and asked him to set up a meeting with Eric. Not to apologize, to issue a challenge. You want to settle this in the ring? Coach Martinez asked. Trayvon, this could get dangerous. These people aren't playing games. Neither am I, Trayvon replied. My father died fighting corruption. My best friend got beat up for being associated with me. How much more am I supposed to take before I'm allowed to fight back? The next day, Eric received the challenge through Coach Martinez. A formal match with referees and rules to settle their differences once and for all. Eric's response came back within an hour. Tell the kid I'll enjoy finishing what I started. But what Eric didn't know was that Trayvon had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Every morning in the basement, every afternoon in the hidden training ground, every night studying his father's combat notes, it had all led to this. The match was set for the following Saturday. Winner takes all. Loser goes home with more than just bruises. And somewhere in the shadows, powerful people were making sure that no matter who won, Trayvon Robinson would never get the chance to fight again. What do you think happens next? Will Trayvon get the respect he deserves? Or is he walking into a trap? Let me know your predictions in the comments, and make sure you subscribe, because this story is about to get intense. The gym was packed like a Friday night prize fight. Word had spread through Jackson faster than wildfire, and everyone wanted to see the rematch between the quiet kid and the cocky instructor. But what looked like a simple martial arts match was actually something much darker, a carefully planned trap. Judge Harrison had made calls to the right people. The referee was his golf buddy. The paramedics were told to take their time, responding to any accidents. And the security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that morning. Everything was set to make sure Trayvon Robinson never walked out of that gym the same way his father never walked out of that jail cell. You ready for this? Coach Martinez asked, wrapping Trayvon's hands in the locker room. But his voice carried a warning that had nothing to do with fighting technique. Coach, I know what they're planning, Trayvon said quietly. My mom got another phone call last night. They told her to keep me home, or they'd make sure I ended up like my father. Then why are you here? Coach Martinez demanded. This isn't worth dying for. Trayvon looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror. His father's eyes stared back at him. My dad died because he tried to expose the truth. If I back down now, his death meant nothing. Sometimes you have to fight even when you know the fight is rigged. In the main gym, Eric was warming up with movements that looked more like a predator preparing to hunt than an athlete preparing to compete. His supporters filled the front rows, their voices already chanting his name. But in the back, Trayvon's community had shown up too. Old Mr. Johnson, Pastor Williams, Kevin with his bruised face and dozens of people who understood what this fight really represented. The bell rang, and both fighters stepped into the ring. But this wasn't just about martial arts anymore. This was about justice, respect, and whether a young black man could stand up to the system and survive. What Eric didn't know was that Trayvon had prepared for more than just a fight. He prepared for war. Can you feel the tension building? This is about to get real. Drop your predictions in the comments and hit that subscribe button, because you're not going to want to miss what happens next. The first 30 seconds told the whole story. Eric came out aggressive, throwing combinations meant to end the fight fast. But Trayvon moved like water, deflecting every strike with the precision his father had drilled into him through hours of basement training. "Come on, boy," Eric shouted, trying to land a haymaker that would have knocked out most teenagers. But Trayvon wasn't most teenagers. He was the son of a Marine, trained in combat techniques that most people only see in movies. The crowd gasped as Trayvon countered with a series of strikes that backed Eric against the ropes. Each punch was calculated, controlled, designed to teach rather than destroy. This wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. "Stop playing with him," someone yelled from Eric's corner. But Trayvon wasn't playing. He was making a statement that echoed through every person in that gym. "Underestimate me at your own risk." By the third round, Eric was bleeding from his nose and breathing hard. The cocky instructor who'd laughed at the quiet kid from West Jackson was now fighting for his reputation. But Trayvon was fighting for something bigger: his father's legacy, his community's pride, and his own right to exist without apology. "You're making them angry," Coach Martinez whispered during a break. "Be careful." Trayvon nodded, but his eyes never left Eric's corner, where Judge Harrison was having an intense conversation with the referee. The fix was in, and everyone could see it. In the fourth round, Eric threw an illegal elbow that should have resulted in disqualification. The referee called it a warning, when Trayvon responded with a perfectly legal takedown. The same referee called it excessive force. The crowd erupted. This wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about fairness, justice, and whether the system would ever allow a young black man to win on his own merits. But what happened next shocked everyone in that gym, including Trayvon himself. Are you seeing the corruption? Can you feel the injustice? Let me know in the comments if you think the system is rigged, and don't forget to like this video if you're ready to see justice served. In the middle of the fifth round, when it looked like the corrupt referee was about to hand Eric a victory he hadn't earned, something unexpected happened. The gym doors burst open, and FBI agents flooded the building. "Nobody move," Agent Sarah Chun announced, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "This facility is under federal investigation." Judge Harrison's face went white. The referee dropped his whistle, and Eric stopped throwing punches to stare at the chaos erupting around them. What nobody in that gym knew was that Trayvon's mother had been working with federal investigators for months. The same corruption that killed Marcus Robinson in that Baton Rouge jail cell had tentacles reaching into Jackson, Mississippi. The fix wasn't just in for tonight's fight, it had been in for years. "Sarah Robinson," Agent Chin called out, and Trayvon's mother stepped forward from the crowd. "Thank you for your cooperation in this investigation." The entire gym fell silent as the truth crashed down on them like a tidal wave. Sarah Robinson hadn't just been a grieving widow. She'd been an undercover informant, gathering evidence about the same corruption network that had killed her husband. "You're under arrest," Agent Chin announced, walking toward Judge Harrison. "Conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder in the death of Marcus Robinson." Judge Harrison tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The same man who dismissed the case against the officers involved in Marcus Robinson's death was now facing federal charges for his role in covering up the murder. Eric stood in the middle of the ring, finally understanding that he'd been a pawn in a much larger game. The quiet kid he'd tried to humiliate was the son of a hero, and the fight was never really about martial arts. "Trayvon," his mother called out, her voice cracking with emotion. "Your father would be so proud." The crowd erupted in cheers, but this time it wasn't about who won the fight. It was about justice finally being served. Are you shocked by this twist? Did you see it coming? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe if you want to see how this incredible story ends. With the arrests happening around them, the fight officially ended. But Trayvon Robinson had already won something bigger than any martial arts match. He'd won justice for his father and respect for his community. The news crews arrived within the hour. The story of the quiet teenager who'd exposed a corruption network while defending his dignity spread across social media faster than anyone could have imagined. Hashtag Justice for Marcus started trending, and Trayvon's name became synonymous with standing up to injustice. "I never wanted to be famous," Trayvon told the reporter who interviewed him outside the gym. "I just wanted people to treat me with respect. But if my story helps other kids stand up for themselves, then maybe all of this was worth it." Eric approached him as the crowd was dispersing. The cocky instructor who'd started this whole mess looked defeated, embarrassed, and maybe for the first time in his life, humble. "I'm sorry," Eric said quietly. "I was wrong about you. About everything." Trayvon looked at the man who'd tried to humiliate him, who'd unknowingly become part of a conspiracy to silence his family. "Apology accepted," he said. "But you need to understand, this was never about you. This was about respect." Coach Martinez walked up to both young men. "You both learned something tonight. Eric, you learned that strength isn't about putting people down. Trayvon, you learned that sometimes the biggest victories happen outside the ring." The hidden training ground behind the abandoned warehouse would become a community center, funded by donations from people who'd been inspired by Trayvon's story. The same place where he'd prepared for battle would now teach other young people that strength comes from discipline, respect, and never backing down from what's right. Judge Harrison was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The officers involved in Marcus Robinson's death were finally charged with murder. And Trayvon Robinson, the quiet kid from West Jackson, became a symbol of hope for young people everywhere who'd been told they didn't matter. But the most important victory was the one that happened at home, where his mother finally got the justice she'd been fighting for since the day her husband died. What do you think about Trayvon's journey? Does his story inspire you to stand up for what's right? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that prove one person can make a difference. 1 year later, Trayvon Robinson stood in front of the newly opened Marcus Robinson Community Center, cutting the ribbon with the same hands that had once trained in secret in a basement. The building was packed with young people from all backgrounds, learning martial arts, conflict resolution, and most importantly, how to stand up for themselves with dignity. "My father always said that real strength isn't about how hard you can hit," Trayvon addressed the crowd. "It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." This center isn't just about fighting. It's about building the kind of community where everyone gets treated with respect. Agent Shun, who'd become a family friend, watched from the audience. The corruption network they'd exposed had led to dozens of arrests across 3 states. Marcus Robinson's death had not been in vain. It had become the key that unlocked a system of injustice that had been hidden for decades. Eric was there too, now working as a volunteer instructor. The experience had changed him in ways he never expected. Teaching kids from all backgrounds had shown him what his own prejudices had blinded him to, that strength, intelligence, and character have nothing to do with the color of your skin. "You saved my life," Eric told Trayvon after the ceremony. "I was becoming everything I hate about this world. You showed me a better way." Trayvon's mother watched her son shake hands with the man who'd once tried to humiliate him. The cycle of anger and revenge had been broken, replaced by something more powerful, understanding and growth. The quiet kid who'd once been underestimated was now inspiring young people across the country. His story had become a movement, showing that one person willing to stand up for what's right can change everything. But the most important change was in Trayvon himself. The anger that had driven him to train in secret had been transformed into purpose. The grief over his father's death had become a celebration of his father's legacy. As the sun set over Jackson, Mississippi, Trayvon Robinson looked at the community center that bore his father's name and smiled. Marcus Robinson had died fighting corruption, but his son had lived to see justice served. And that, more than any victory in any ring, was worth fighting for. What did you think of Trayvon's incredible journey? His story proves that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that show the power of never giving up on justice. Remember, you have the power to make a difference in your own community. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our other videos about real people making real differences in their communities. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light. What story would you like to hear next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below.